My name is Maya Palmer. I'm the editor of Global Corporate Venturing, and it is my great pleasure to host the webinar tonight. If you're joining, I'll just, if you want to ask our panel some questions, please do use the Q&A function that you'll see at the bottom of the screen, and we will try to take as many of your questions as we can. So yes, this is part of a webinar series that we do on the second Wednesday of every month. So please do check out the other webinars that we'll be running. This one in particular is on pop, beauty, and chips, which was just our catchy title for trying to encapsulate the great richness of things that are now coming out of Korea. I think Korea has been a big force in the global economy for a long time. I've been carrying around a Samsung phone for a long time. I've had an LG TV, a Samsung fridge. But actually, more recently, we've also seen a lot more kind of cultural awareness, I think, coming out from, because we've had K-drama, K-pop. I have a niece who's absolutely encyclopedic on K-pop bands. And also when I went to visit Korea last year, my teenage daughters begged me to bring every beauty product back that I could possibly stuff into my suitcase. So I think it's fair to say that kind of awareness of Korean culture is really permeating on all levels at the moment. And what we want to explore tonight is just kind of how that is impacting the investment scene as well. On the panel today with me are four people who really are experts in this. So we have Jeffrey Lim, who's from Signite Partners, and this is the venture arm of Shinsegae, which is Korea's leading retail conglomerate, and which has quite recently set up a special fund for beauty investments. So that's a very interesting development that Jeffrey can tell us about a little more. Leo Ahn is at Lotte Ventures and recently, which recently kind of built a presence in the Bay Area. So Leo is joining us from the US today. And Lotte, of course, is another Korean conglomerate whose activities span everything from food to confectionery to hotels. And it is one of the most active in terms of investing in Korean startups. So. And now kind of obviously increasingly looking to taking that activity to the US. And I think Leo can tell us you're looking particularly at healthcare, but we'll hear a little bit more about that. And then we have Hee Jung, who is with SK Group. Again, SK, it's always hard to kind of encapsulate everything that these groups do, but everything from vaccines to batteries to energy, chemicals, semiconductors, IT, telecoms. I'm probably not even touching the surface. And, SK Group has been, he actually has been investing for 10 years. There's been in the US. So it started off as a kind of smaller outpost, but now has grown to become an absolutely integral part of kind of strategizing and bringing innovation into the company. And it's often, I think when I was speaking to Hee before, often this role is also very much about helping Korean startups kind of internationalize and come to the overseas market. And then representing a slightly different point of view is Gil Kim, who is with Applied Ventures. And you'll notice that Applied, which is the corporate venture arm of Applied Materials, is not a Korean company, but Gil is looking particularly at kind of investments in Korea for Applied Ventures, amongst other things. So this is kind of looking at the other side of how, companies from outside of Korea then also taking advantage of these investment opportunities that are coming up. So that's our panel tonight. I'm just going to show a couple of very brief slides to just frame the discussion, just showing the kind of huge growth that we saw in VC activity in Korea over the last few years. A huge rise like that everybody had seen, globally in sort of 21, 22 in terms of VC activity. It has come down a little bit in 23 and 24 as it has in the rest of the world, but still remaining, I think, relatively high. And we have seen that kind of despite the decline, there may be a little bit of a bounce coming back, because when you look at sort of the first half of 2024, it was a little bit up on where we were in 2023. So it could be that we're either plateauing or beginning maybe some sort of recovery period. The kind of presence of corporate venture in this mix is really interesting. If you can see the chart, it's been relatively steady throughout the years, being a sort of roughly 25% of kind of deals having some kind of corporate money involved. And there has been some relaxation in Korean law about making it easier to start VC units. So we've seen a huge flowering of corporate VC units in the country. And when we did a piece on this earlier in the year for Global Corporate Venturing, it was kind of about a third of all Korean companies, or certainly of the country's industrial conglomerates, had created a VC arm. So it's a very healthy and active CVC sector. And then this was just to show kind of what some of the top investors in Korea are. The bottom of this chart is cutting off because it was just so many, again, which gives you an idea of just how much is going on. And Lotte Ventures, as I mentioned, is right at the top there. But that kind of brings us to the beginning of the discussion. I'm going to come back to some of our future events later, but I'd really like to invite all the panel now, and thank you very much for taking some time out to share your expertise with us. But I think it would be good to hear from you a little bit about what you are particularly sort of doing at the moment, what you're offering, how you're looking to work with startups at this point. So in no particular order, why don't we start with maybe you, Jeffrey, and tell us what Signite Partners is looking to do at the moment.
Well, thank you, Maya. Hello, everyone. Very glad to meet you all. I'm Jeffrey Lim. I'm managing partner at Signite. Signite is a CVC arm on the Shinsegae Group. As Maya briefly mentioned of the Shinsegae Group, but for those of you who are not familiar with the Shinsegae Group, well, Shinsegae is Korea's one of the largest leading retail group. Everything from low-cost supermarkets, hypermarkets, to super ultra luxury department stores. We have shopping malls, duty-free stores, outlets, and then 150 more fashion and beauty brands. And we also operate premium hotels and resorts. And then F&B brands, such as like a Starbucks. We own and operate 100% of Starbucks Korea here. So that's basically what Shinsegae does. We have two public companies in Korea among our group. And Signite is the venture capital arm on the Shinsegae Group. We are kind of a scout team, speedboat, to go ahead of mothership and then explore and discover new technologies and new brands, new business opportunities. So that's what we do here in Shinsegae. We focus on startups in consumer goods, fashion, beauty, wellness, food tech, those stuff. And we try to be stage agnostic. We do everything from the early stage. We don't do really seed stage investments, but we do from Series A to far away to pre-IPO deals. Geographically, we have been investing heavily in Korea and US to date, but I wish to expand our business to broader regions to see more opportunities and more exciting markets. So that's what we do. I've been part of startup ecosystem for more than 20 years as a founder, as an accelerator, and as an investor, both in Silicon Valley and Korea, working for companies like Google, SoftBank Ventures, and 500 Global. So that's what we do. That's what I do. So I'm very glad to be here today. Thank you, Maya.
All right. Well, thanks, Jeffrey. So why don't we go to Leo now? I mean, Lotte Ventures, are you the deadly rival of Shinsegae, or is it? And maybe you can give us a little bit of a difference in what Lotte Ventures is looking at, and you particularly, given that you're based and having started this outpost really now in the Bay Area.
Thanks for having me. So I think, yeah, probably we are the rival of companies in terms of retail with Shinsegae, but yeah, well, in venture capital industry, we're probably slightly different. So Lotte Ventures has been around for it's our 9th year now, I think, almost a decade now. We have offices in Seoul and in Japan and Vietnam in APAC, and I established this US office last year, at the end of last year. Lotte Group is, we have almost 70 subsidiary companies, covering from chemical engineering to entertainment, department stores, supermarket. Reason we we invest in every industries basically. We have almost 300 portfolio companies, so it's quite hard to manage them all. But yeah, we are trying our best. In the US, however, we're trying to focus on biotech, healthcare, and some other new technologies, of course, including AIs and robotics. But the reason why we are trying to stepping into biotech industry is that because we established Lotte Biologics a couple of years ago, and then basically we want to do biotech manufacturing. So we bought small factory from BMS a couple of years back, and then I'm trying to build up new factories back in Korea and buy some more assets perhaps. Yes, that's our focus here in the US. Me personally, I started a small cosmetics company with a friend almost like 10 years ago. Didn't really go well because that was male cosmetics, and also back then we didn't really have any professional marketing tool. We have to learn everything from the ground. So not like these days we have Facebook and Instagram and stuff. So it didn't really go well, and then I joined um, this Korean and American venture capital called Artus Ventures in Korea. I spent like 6 months there, and then joined other fund in Korea for 3.5, and then joined Lotte Ventures. It's my fifth year here with Lotte Ventures. So yeah, that's me. And
Okay, great. So you've seen it from all sides, and I'm sensing, so you both have got at least two of the panel who have a sort of founder background, which is always useful when you're dealing with this. Gil, why don't we go to you? Jump in. Slightly different. You're looking at it from the perspective of investing for a US organization, but tell us a little bit about what your remit is.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Maya. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. This is Gil Kim from Applied Ventures. Like Maya mentioned, Applied Ventures is a CVC arm of Applied Materials. For those who are not familiar with Applied Materials, we are the largest semiconductor and display equipment manufacturer in the world. So the customer like TSMC, Intel, Samsung are mostly purchasing the equipments from ours, and we are a eyes and ears of the applied materials, seeking for the innovative and creative and differentiated technologies that startups has all over the places, including Korea. And given the importance of semiconductor industry in Korea, there are so many innovative startups in Korea that are working in semiconductor, display, battery, and deep tech industry overall. So we're actively looking for the investment opportunity to generate both strategic and the financial return for our parent organization. Um, Unlike Shinsegae, Lotte, and SK Group, we are a US company seeking for the investment opportunity into Korean companies. But our mandates, I think, are pretty much aligned, all three, rest of us, which is support Korean companies to, globalize, including US and outside of the US, and help them to succeed in the global market rather than just be a champion in the local domestic market. Although the semiconductor industry in Korea is massive and huge, but there are much room to grow for those startups. And then we're trying to help them, and along with our parent organizations, that's what our mandate is. And we typically look for Series A and onward, and ticket size as small as 500K to as big as 20 million per company. And yeah, that's us, and happy to joining as a panel today.
Yep. And what I think, did you mention that I believe you had a separate fund that was set up recently to
Right.
also help invest
Thank
in
you.
some of these Korean companies?
Yep. Yeah. So I think this is co-hosted by Ministry of SME and Startup, and that is one of our LP. And we have two separate funds that is dedicated to invest into Korean companies. And our fund one was set up in 2017. That went fairly well. So we launched our second fund in 2022, and we're actively seeking for the investment opportunity.
All right, so no, great. Thanks for that. And last but not least, if you could tell us a little bit about your role and what SK Group is doing. Again, I feel like you're a real Bay Area veteran, having been doing this for a long time there for SK.
My name is leading the innovation and investment arm of SK Discovery, and we are in charge of innovation and investment because after making the investment, the post-investment activities are much more important for the strategic investors. So our team looks after having that innovation actually happen with the mother companies. And briefly, as many of you may know, SK has over 200 affiliates, and we have supporting companies to better manage operating companies. And SK Discovery is one of the supporting companies, meaning I have access into a number of operating companies. I'm not going to bore you with going through every company that I work with, but they basically fall into four industries. One is energy, chemical, pharma, and bioscience and properties. Thus, we invest in energy transition, green chemicals like recycling tech, monomer and polymer related techs, and also property tech for built environments and new medicines and vaccines. We are strategic investors looking at startups from Series A all the way to pre-IPO stages. And the investment amount will depend on how much value that we can add to that startup. And we'll be very strategic about making that dollar amount to be deployed to that company. And we would add a lot more value for those launching businesses into international market rather than just getting them financial support. So that's what we are trying to do here out of Silicon Valley.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. So that's our panel. Everyone knows a little bit more about what everyone is doing. So I would say, again, if you have any particular questions for anyone, do put them in the Q&A channel. But let's kick off with just looking at how, whether the Korean investment landscape, whether you've seen it changing. I feel like there's more awareness, and we've certainly seen a lot more units being set up sort of outside of Korea. It feels like it's become easier to invest in Korea. I'd love to put it to the panel. Have you seen a difference now in either interest, the kind of startups that are coming up, the ease of doing business? Maybe staying with you here, and any thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have to break it into two folds because one for investors and one for startups. Speaking of which, for Korean investors' perspective, compared to like 8-9 years ago, I see many more Korean investors investing into more diverse sectors and also looking into global startups rather than just looking at domestic Korean startups. And it's more open to working with international investors from startup side as well. So everything was really heavily focused for Korean investors and startups to really dominate the market inside Korea. But now they're just thinking, okay, how do we get to international market? So the starting point and the idea itself and trying to solve these problems have evolved from domestic problems into international problems. So there's that much more opportunities for those people looking at investing and also making these ideas into realization. Is becoming more expandable in terms of markets. So I see a lot of change or big change compared to 8-9 years ago. And I think that's what I've been witnessing for the whole ecosystem became much more broad, diverse, and global.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe again, we'll go to you, Gil. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, and as a kind of US company, maybe looking into this market, has it become easier to invest in Korean companies? Are you seeing more coming up? Is there more interest, maybe even within Applied Materials for this?
Yeah, my view is more tailored to the semiconductor industry or deep tech industry per se. But I would say, given the importance of semiconductor industry and the maturity of the startup and the venture investment ecosystem in Korea, it has been not so difficult for us to find startups in Korea and make an investment. But I can't tell that I cannot, mention the decoupling between US and China and geopolitical issue in this industry. All the attentions for non-Chinese investors into China has been almost gone now. That has provided Korean companies, more advantage to be exposed into the global investors like ourselves. And also not only for the US investors, but I can tell all other regions, including Europe and other Asian regions and Middle East, are actively looking for companies in Korea in the deep tech industry. So I would say that's the major changes, but in for the past few years in this industry.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that's making it, is it more competitive actually now in investing in this, because there's just all this interest now converging on Korea, and you've been active in looking at that market for a long time, but just wondering maybe if you're feeling that, for any deal that you're looking at, maybe there's more competition to get onto those cap tables and so on.
Yeah, that's what I am hearing from my colleagues and networks in Korea, and also outside of Korea. But as a strategic investor and the semiconductor ecosystem player, we have some advantage, to appeal ourselves to be put in the cap table, since the strategic investors bring the different value, in addition to the capital to the startups.
And I'm guessing having a big industry name behind you does help and have some sway there.
Yeah, I cannot deny.
Yeah. Okay. And then just to very, it's great actually that we have kind of the heavy industry or deep tech, and then a kind of maybe more consumer focused. Well, I know that you do biotech and healthcare too, Leo, but it's nice to get the kind of rounded view. So I'm just wondering, again, maybe thinking specifically about those industries that you're looking at. Again, are you seeing changes in levels of interest, or even the number of startups that are coming out and being available to invest in?
So you're saying that other than healthcare or biotech or other industries?
So I guess, I mean, so Lotte looks at a lot of different things, and you're looking specifically at biotech and healthcare. So I just wondered whether you would want to speak maybe specifically to those. There's obviously Lotte had a specific interest in kind of getting into this industry, but also are you just, is that because there is a sort of, I don't know, a growing interest from the company to be, and to be looking abroad, I suppose, for some of those startups that, whatever it is that you're looking for at the moment in the US?
All right, okay. So we are only just starting to browsing. So we are looking for deals. We haven't done any biotech or healthcare in the US yet. We have done one, but that was like 4 or 5 years ago. The data healthcare struggling like most of the companies in that area. But yeah, so we're still browsing which one to invest in. But this biotech industry, because of the Biosecure Act, I think there's some opportunities gonna pass on to some Korean companies and Japanese companies, and also some Indian companies, of course. So yeah, because we have trying to focus on biotech companies that can give some manufacturing orders to CDMO companies. So we're expecting some positive.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a kind of geopolitical realignment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah. No, that's interesting. And then I guess going just to Jeffrey finally on this question, but just wondering, the changes you've seen, and we spoke for a piece that we did for GCV about just the Korean beauty wave, which is, I think, you guys set up a fund specifically to respond to that. So I'm just wondering, what kind of changes have you been seeing recently in that investment landscape?
Well, yes, there has been a lot of changes for the past years. The startups market in consumer fashion and beauty sector it has been already a very competitive market in both in domestic and global wide. And then especially investment side in Korea in that sector has been competition has been increased a lot. I get many questions from investors from all around the world, from New York City to London to Middle East, Far East. All the investors are flocking into Korea to invest more in consumer goods startups in because the K beauty and K fashion are booming globally. So that's the changes I'm seeing. That's one of the reasons why we set up a new dedicated fund in that sector to invest in that sector. So I think it's true that Korean cosmetics and fashion companies made a global impression thanks to the popularity of K-pop and groups like BTS and Blackpink, and then social influencers. I believe K-beauty has become now its own sector. Its wide appeal, I believe comes from two factors like quality and affordability. Which are enabled by a strong foundation of the many hundreds of brands, manufacturers with R&D capabilities, and then distribution channels globally. So thanks to those of the effort of a new ecosystem in cosmetics and fashion, I think that's how they enabled the global presence of those Korean consumer goods. So this why the many investors, Korean investors, and then investors in other regions wishes to invest more in Korean consumer companies innovating with innovating technologies.
Yeah, and when I was doing research for this, I read somewhere that there's sort of 20,000 Korean skincare brands now.
Yes.
Which was an incredible number.
Yes. And every day, every morning I wake up, I see new brands and new companies. I cannot keep track of everything.
Yeah. But so then actually, trying to invest in some of those brands can be interesting, but actually you were taking a slightly more macro approach, I think, and trying to invest in some of maybe the enabling technologies around that.
Yes, correct. So the thing is, if I want to invest in early stage startups in cosmetic brands, for example, I cannot pick anyone because I don't know how which one is going to be big, the next Joseon or next big like Cosrx in yes. So instead of doing that, I'm looking at more data I look at data from the Amazon and many other e-commerce sites, and then I collect all the data, which one is popping up, and then which keywords is popping up. So I try to my best to sense the signals earlier in, and then try to engage with those brands. And then also I invested in R&D and then distribution channels as well, so that I can have more deals from those distributions and then manufacturing and R&D side. So there are a couple of layers that I invest. My investment strategy is I invest in the manufacturing and R&D side first, and then distribution side first, and then I go deeper into specific brands, which brands I have to invest in.
And staying with you for a moment, because I'd love to talk a little bit about what's always one of the most fun topics on this is what's hot and what's coming up. But just within again, in that, let's say, beauty and fashion segment, I mean, what are you seeing that's coming out of Korea at the moment that's particularly strong? I mean, we've talked about beauty specifically, but are there some either companies or technologies that you think are kind of worth keeping an eye on?
No, so can I answer first, or?
Yeah. Why don't we stay with you and then we'll.
Okay, yes. So the technology is also a big part. It has been big part, the biggest part in Korea, in venture investments. Machine learning is global, thing, but it's also a big thing in Korea as well. And then I'm focusing on machine learning technology in this consumer sector. There are a lot of things that we can do with machine learning. Also in beauty. Like for example, I want to talk about the CDRI company that I invested in recently. So before CDRI, any cosmetic company that wishes to export their product to US, for example, they need to get FDA approval, and it takes like very complex process for many months, like 3 to 6 months, and it requires a lot of money with a lot of manpower. But what CDRI offers with machine learning is that they automated everything. They collect all the documents, they automate everything, and then they can get the FDA approval within a couple of weeks, not months, with a fraction of a cost. So those like machine learning technologies can enable everything with a very low cost, and then they can offer to those cosmetic brands to go global more easily than ever. And then there's a competitive advantage against other cosmetic companies in any other countries, I think.
Yeah. And the interesting thing I think about these was that some of this was developed because of the strength in semiconductors and some of those technology sectors, because that was a very export heavy industry, and so to have this
That's interesting. That like I'm not sure if the audience know about the company called Silicon 2. So Silicon 2 is a distributor of a Joseon Beauty. They sell like millions of sunscreen products in US. Very good product. So Silicon 2 distributes not only the Joseon Beauty but many other brands globally. They are distribution company, but the origin of Silicon 2, where the name came from, is that they were a distributor of silicon chips, semiconductors. so they pivoted their business from the semiconductor distribution to cosmetic distribution. So those are like things all connected each other. So.
Yeah. So this is where the Venn diagrams of kind of the interests of this panel sort of coincide. I'd love to go to you, Gil, now, because as someone else who's kind of looking maybe into the Korean ecosystem for inspiration, what are you finding that's really kind of hot and interesting right now?
I mean, pop beauty chips. When I first encountered this title, I was like, what is this about? But I end up really liked it. I think pop beauty and chips are a very hot area, and Korea is good at it. There are so many startups, and if you want to have a good startup, you have to have a good pipeline. But in order to have a good pipeline, I would say you need to support from government. Country like Korea, it's unlike US, it's a relatively well aligned and how do I say, have a aligned view and then the aligned organization in terms of the administrations and government structure. And this government is helping to boost not only the investment, but also bolstering, create the new startups in these specific verticals every other day. So this has been really helpful for us as a non-Korean investor to find out the new startups and get connected, and also get a LP investment from the government side. And so this would be my answer. It's not like a specific sector, but from the Korean startup ecosystem point of view, I think government support is one of the particularly strength and differentiated from other regions, I would say.
Yeah, it's one of the few places where I've come across there being a specific ministry for startups, which is a pretty good signal for how much support there is. But yeah, it's great to hear that it's having an impact for you noticeably in terms of what you can get access to, I guess, in the country. I'd love to turn the question now sort of maybe the other way, because I know that he and Leo, you're more sort of eyes on what's outside of Korea, and what you can kind of bring back, I suppose, for your own mothership companies in terms of ideas and inspiration. So maybe you could speak a little bit to kind of what is interesting for Korean companies right now. So maybe I'll start with you for that.
Well, I'll have to speak to the ones that I'm looking at, such as energy transition, chemicals, and the keywords here is decarbonization, sustainability, and circularity. So we are looking at a lot of the solutions that has innovative technology for being able to provide cheaper energy and cleaner energy, and also be able to recycle more, such as plastic, battery, and also textile recycling is very big these days. And we are trying to take those technology into heavy manufacturing facilities that Korea has, so that we can really be more helpful and be able to look after the earth itself to recycle more and be more greener in terms of providing energy and all those goods that we use every day. So those are the big focus that we have from outbound to inbound of Korea. And also, Korean startups are very capable of having good ideas and turning that into more efficient solutions compared to what's out there right now. So it starts from those good ideas and efficiency. And I won't name specific companies, but I see a lot of companies coming out of the property tech is kind of targeting at our international market. And as you know, US by far, it's the biggest single market. And there are many single family homes, but there are also many multifamily homes. And Korea is all about apartments. So I see a lot of good startups coming out of Korea to kind of give better service to tenants and also be able to have those AI solutions on their phones so that it's giving better services to the tenants. So that's another market that we're looking at, rather from Korean market into US and European market.
Yeah. And we can come back a little bit to sort of about how you would have that build a relationship with those startups. But it's a good thought just to, where those areas of interest are. And then, same question to you, Leo. I think we already touched on the interest in healthcare and biotech and so on. I wondered whether there was anything in particular that you sort of feel are there areas of that are of interest to the mothership right now?
Yeah, so probably couple of companies I can talk about. I can't reveal the names, but one of the companies I reviewed during the summer was the chocolate company from the lab. Lotte traditionally imports almost 4,500 tons of cocoa beans from Ghana, and then because of the price of cocoa beans, so at the end of last year, they almost tripled. So I tried to look for the substitutions for the traditional ingredients, and then found this company. Took a DD, but dropped the deal eventually. But it was a good company to study as well, because you can replace the natural ingredients. That was one of the companies. So I was trying to bring back this cheaper solutions for existing goods. That was the one thing I tried to do. Second company is basically okay. So if I go back to the edge of strength of Korea market is the power of manufacturing. So cosmetics also they have, because they can produce lots of brands in small quantities and large quantities, because they have these facilities to that can support this or this needs for the new brands and mass. Also, it can also apply to semiconductors as well. They have good level of technique to build the chips so they can go global. So this second company, which I'm currently reviewing, is a space tech, but because Lotte covers lots of different sectors, they can provide some manufacturing for this tech company. So Bay Area companies, they are very good at software, but sometimes they're very lack of understanding in terms of manufacturing. But not just Korea, but APAC countries in general, they're very strong in manufacturing. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China also. So So one, I'm trying to bring back the technology in. That was a food tech company, and the other one, I'm trying to supply our original technology to Silicon Valley companies as a
Okay.
manufacturer. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, okay, so this is a very wide brief. But actually it would be good to double click on this idea of the, the really the key advantage in this relationship with startups is this manufacturing ability that, and I've heard this mentioned by, a number of you, but I think if we stay with you, Leo, on this point, I think what a lot of people would love to hear more about is just how does the relationship work? So when, there is an investment, let's say you do invest in a company and let's say it's outside of Korea. So perhaps they're not as familiar with working with a Korean conglomerate and so on. What can they kind of expect in terms of, how they build the relationship then with the parent company? How much hand holding do they get from you, maybe personally, as they navigate through that relationship?
So basically, when I work with tech companies, I try to invite engineers or scientists from our mothership, so they can have deep talk about their technology with our scientists. That's what I did with my food tech company. I actually asked the headquarters to send some scientists over to this chocolate company so they can do the tech DD. Same for this company I'm reviewing right now. So I always try to bring in these engineers from the first meeting, from the beginning. So giving this impression that we know the tech, and then we can also support in ways that Silicon Valley companies usually can't. So that's what we're trying to do. Of course, they, like you said, they never heard of a company called Lotte, unless they have spent some time in Asia. But I mean, this kind of advantage we can offer. I mean, they're quite attracted by this kind of relationship, so they can double check on manufacturing side of technologies, because then you can try the we can reduce the try and error.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so quite an early engagement with the with maybe the the R&D and the manufacturing teams. So that definitely can help speed things up in terms of the engagement, I guess, further down the line. I think, similar question to you, I mean, you've been doing this, for quite a long time and built, I think, quite an interesting position. I'd actually just love you to talk us through it, because you sort of made yourself very indispensable, I think, as a unit for a number of the SK Group businesses, and that's quite a feat in itself as well.
Yeah.
But how do you take, the relationship then with a portfolio company to the parent organization?
Uh, Before we invest, we look at the strategic purpose of their technology being able to support the Korean economy first. Because often the first question that I get asked by our customer is, have you tried it yourself? So we need in your backyard first, meaning the US startup has to be able to build the product market fit products in US. And then how do we modify that into fit into other countries? So that's where we come in as a strategic investor. And when you're going into a new country, there's a lot of permits and other requirements from the government that comes along. So you need a good partner to work with you. And it can't be too many, because they're going to try to pull you into different directions, right? So SK comes in as an investor, we establish that relationship, and we keep educating the startup how the Korean economy works. And we start to look at how we can dedicate small line of production for them to do a test bed of their products and see if it works. And in that course of process, there's a lot of permits and also legal issues. And also Korea has to be benefiting from the technology and also be able to create more jobs. So we try to have more local contents, and that's a critical issue, because if their technology is all geared towards US manufacturing, then it's very difficult for them to have that geared towards international market. So how can you give up a little bit of your IP so that you can involve more local contents? That's a very critical issue. So a lot of startups that work with us to get to international market, eventually into Asian market, we educate them those things and try to have the core technology remain in US, but the other side of the BOP, the balance of plant, or other products that gets made into their full product needs to be balanced with other local contents. And that's the easiest way to get into different countries. And it also gets by us the CFIUS rule from US government. So that US is also feeling very comfortable of the key technology not going outside of US. And also other countries are happy because they're spending money to produce their products in their country by spending money. So that's the key component.
And you've said it's sort of, it can be a process of education for some startups that you start to work with. Is it sometimes a stumbling block for them, or are most people, able to kind of make those transitions that they might need to?
Very, very, because it needs a lot of education. We need to enhance the awareness of the board members too. Because I'm not just working with a startup, I'm also working with all the other board of directors. And they need to be convinced, they need to understand why this solution can go to Korea and be more successful. So that education takes a little bit of time. And of course, that's part of my job, building the relationship with other board members. And once they're convinced that there's a chance to kind of expand the market into Korea and into Asian markets, then I get a lot of support, and I need that support.
Yeah.
So that's the critical piece too.
Yeah. And obviously sort of going into those manufacturing test beds and so on. Do you find there's any, other things that you sort of, if you're working with let's say a US startup, I mean, is there a lot that they need to learn about the kind of almost the culture of working together with people who are maybe based in Korea, if they don't have a lot of experience of that? I imagine there's always some cultural differences. How much of that do you encounter?
That's a great question because as a startup, everything starts small, right? They want to aim small and miss small. So everything starts with small manufacturing, and they often utilize US manufacturers or Canadian or European manufacturers. But once you want to get to the mass production of some sort, you got to look at other equipment. You got to work with other vendors, and they have no idea how to work with it. They don't even know who to contact. And that's where the partner comes in. So not just me, but also Loti and Shinsegae and other big companies like Applied Ventures, they have those pool of connections into other vendors. And we can get them better equipment, we can get them better relationship, we can get them better cost and other conditions. So they're working with the right partner getting into a new country is the success factor for startups when they're expanding into international market.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, great. And I think sort of bouncing this around, but Gil, I'm just wondering, you're kind of again going sort of almost the opposite direction. So what about the way that, if you have a investment in a Korean startup and then you're sort of bringing it in to work with maybe Applied Materials more, how does that relationship usually proceed?
So quick background how Applied Materials works in Korea. We have more than 2,500 people in Korea, and mostly engineers and tech sales who likely have good relationship with local startup founders and engineers and the local semiconductor companies like SK Hynix or Samsung Electronics, etc. So they're often connected between engineers. They get introduced. Hey, I know one engineer who is working at Applied Materials. Why don't you get connected so that you can introduce your startup technology to Applied Materials? And that connection oftentimes stuck in the middle of working level meetings and the non necessarily forwarded to the venture meetings or very effective communication path within Applied Materials. So whenever I talk to Korean startups, I encourage them to find the right person or right BU, not necessarily VC or CVC, but you got to know whom to talk to in a very effective and efficient way. That will lead and that will streamline a lot of processes, and that will enhance your exposure within the decision makers and key influencers. And for that, Applied Ventures as a US investor looking for Korean startups, we especially myself, try to be a conduit to connect Korean startups and get introduced to relevant BU. And within Applied, there is a unique position that connects between venture arm and the business unit, so that we have multiple pipelines feed in those the specific unit, and that specific unit identified which BU would be relevant and would be interested talking to further. So that relationship doesn't sound easy, but I think that's the critical to get well exposed and well connected with the US companies, especially Applied.
Yeah, so it's so okay. So it sounds like it can be difficult to find the right person, but it also sounds like you've been, you know, doing this for quite a while. So perhaps there is kind of a methodology of making sure that you get those connections made. I mean, is that do you almost have like a playbook for it when somebody, you know, when you have a portfolio company and you're thinking, okay, well, who should they be having the relationship with from here?
That's part of my job, and then I think we have a playbook well played for the past decades.
Yeah, yeah. So it works. I think sometimes that's good for startups actually to know just how much help they can actually expect from the you know, the venture team. Like as in, you know, these teams are often very well geared up for doing exactly those kind of introductions. So it's it's a point worth emphasizing. So you know, Jeffrey, just in the you know, we'll turn to I think the last question about challenges in a minute, but I just wondered, and this might actually lead into it, but I think, you know, again, you're sort of again, I think when we were talking in preparation for this, you know, it's sort of how complicated sometimes it can be with these conglomerate structures, and they do have multiple units, and the personnel there change. So again, I don't know if you have any thoughts on how you best take a startup through some of those relationships and help them understand, you know, the process.
Well, yeah. Well, I think, you know, well, I don't think the Korean conglomerates are, you know, too particularly, you know, more complex than any other large multinational companies. Like, you know, like if you want to deal with, you know, Nike, Walmart, Boeing, you know, they all also have a very complex organization chart, right? So it's same to, you know, every big companies, very hard to navigate. As Gil mentioned, I think it's, you know, the first thing is it's very important to find the right persons. Maybe not only the one people, but like, you know, the several key persons who can make decisions, or who can you know, make more progress of the startups project within the in a big company. So that's one key thing. And then I think the other thing I believe is that it's a little bit of a cultural thing in Korea, particularly. Korean companies are more, you know, they feel more comfortable with the face-to-face meetings. So in a global world, you know, after like pandemic era, we all feel comfortable with the Zoom meetings and remote workings, etc. But still, the FaceTime is very important in Korea. So I often advise, you know, come over to Seoul, or like as many times as, you know, they can, and then making, you know, good quality time, you know, FaceTime, you know, with key persons in Korea, and then maybe we can travel too. So that is one cultural thing, and the other thing is timing wise. So so one thing, I'm not sure if the other companies in the Western world do this, but many Korean conglomerates, they shift their leaderships almost every year. So especially in like toward the end of the year, like, you know, in November and the December time frame, they nominate new leadership, and then the key decision makers change. You know, they may change like several times. So to just avoid those times, like make it, you know, make deal signed before like, you know, the September, you know, August, or wait until like Q1 next year, you know, after new leadership, you know, takes control of it. So yeah, so the timing is a little bit important in Korean culture, I think. Yes.
Okay, I think very good practical advice. Get it done before September.
Yes.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left, so I think I'd like to sort of close out with this question, which I don't mean to be negative, but I think it's more sort of looking at kind of where things might go from here. So it's, you know, it's what remaining challenges there are, I guess, in the Korean ecosystem. I mean, we've seen huge growth, huge amount of activity, but I just wondered whether you had thoughts on whether there were any particular pain points that you'd kind of like to see us overcome. And I'll stay with you, Jeffrey, for the moment, and then we'll just get some quick thoughts from everyone.
Well, I want to talk about a little bit more general startup ecosystem. So one thing, so even though Korean startup ecosystem has grown and matured a lot in the past decade, like we have many startups, we have many investors, different kind of investors, but still we are lacking of many global, top leading global VCs actively investing in Korea. So global VCs represent only like a very fraction of the market share in Korea. We have only like Altos and a few other Silicon Valley VCs. I think that's a little bit problem. If you want to go further, we need to invite more, VCs from all around the world with a different diverse investment themes. So that's one thing that we need to solve. We need to invite more startups. We need more, founders from other countries. Immigrations. That's one thing that Korean has to resolve in the future, and then LP side as well. So even though the Korean government, especially Minister of SMB, they've been playing a very key role, very critical role to promote startup ecosystem and then venture capital ecosystem for the past like more than 2 decades. That's great. But I think we need to diversify LP pools in Korea as well. So we need more LPs from outside the world, from Western world, coming to Korea. We need to invite them. We need to give more benefits to them to invest, more motivations to them to invest more in Korea. So I think that's the way to go. So that's the challenges that we have, I think, in general.
Yeah. Okay, great. Always room for improvement. How should we go to you, Gil, and anything you'd like to add to that in terms of if you had a wish list of where you'd like to see things go from here?
I often encourage startup founders to not just start from Korea, but start from global, meaning in semiconductor industry, Korea already set up so mature and so vast ecosystem in this specific industry. So oftentimes startup founders are happy enough to maintain where they are, and they have enough customers and supply chains and vendors to support their innovative business model. But once that is saturated within the local market, then you have to look outside of Korea, and then you face the problem.
Yeah.
So I would encourage the, battlefield is not in Korea, but in global market. That's my number one advice to the Korean startup founders. And number two, same notion. Given the small, condensed venture ecosystem, if there are very small number of good startups, then venture investments tend to be concentrated into certain startups, number of startups that will boost up the valuation a lot. And when they try to come out series A and B into the global market, then the valuation is not justified from the global investor point of view. So think about bigger market and think about longer market. That's my takeaway.
Yeah. Okay. No, good thoughts. Should we come to you?
Yeah.
What's on your wish list?
Well, other panels already touched on other areas. I'm going to say something for the startups in Korea. And I know that every country has their own ecosystem, and there are pros and cons, of course. And there are many good things coming out of Korea. But I often advise to a lot of Korean startups that are asking me to advise them for attracting, investment from Silicon Valley or from European market. I tell them that I tell them to spend less time for those government projects. They're so tied to doing so many government projects because it's a lot faster, quicker, and easier money. And they leave their core technology just sitting there and not developing them further because they're so busy doing too many projects. And that's actually happening when they're going from Series A to B. But that's the time when they really need to be focused on their core proprietary technology. So I often tell a lot of the startups at that stage saying, hey guys, you got to step away a little bit from the government project to be more, sustainable for your business. Go back to your investors for more money and just keep developing your core technology. Don't walk away from it. That's not done yet. So that's one challenge that I make to the startups coming out of Korea.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it's sort of in the same vein of maybe thinking bigger, earlier and so on.
Yeah.
Leo, I'm going to give you the last word as we're sort of almost running out of time, but I'd love your thoughts on.
Yeah, I think the other guys pretty much covered everything, but just adding a couple more sentence. Probably I think for Korean ecosystem to, become more healthier, I think there should be more M&A going on there. There are too few M&As happening in Korean venture capital and startup industry compared to US or European markets. So I think if larger companies are brave enough to acquire or buy smaller companies, then I think you will make startup ecosystem much more healthier.
Okay. All right. Well, a good thought to finish on. So I'm going to say a very big thank you to the panel because we have come to the end of the time, and I feel like we could have talked about this much longer, but and we've only begun to scratch the surface. But I think we've got a kind of a good snapshot, at least, of where we are now, and a pretty good idea of what all of you as investors are looking for. So I hope that's been helpful for people, and so. Thank you very much. I've just got a couple of sort of just some notifications that I want to share. So as GCV, we do some upcoming events, or we do events around the world. We've got the GCV Asia Congress happening in Japan. We're going to be in Korea in December. So if you were interested in what we were discussing here, you can have the opportunity to actually go to Seoul, which, that was one of the advice, some of the advice that we heard, that is, FaceTime is important. And then, of course, we have some of our big, much bigger events like the GCVI Summit, which is in Monterey in March, and the GCV Symposium in London in June. We also do courses, so, for CVC investors to learn how to kind of handle some of those relationships with parent companies and so on. So if you're a CVC investor looking at opportunities to upskill, these are, please do get in touch and have a look at these. And I have a couple of asks for anyone who stayed with us for the duration, was interested, but we are still running our GCV Keystone survey of all the CVC units in the world, and we like to make that as comprehensive as we can. So we're still looking for people to add their data. It's all anonymized, and if you take part in the survey, you do get a free advanced copy of the resulting benchmarking report, which is very useful if you want to see how you're doing against your global peer group. And also we love feedback on these webinars. So if there's anything that you'd like to tell us about how you thought it went today and would like to offer us some pointers, please do that. We love feedback. That's really it from me. We will have more webinars. This was the last one for this year, but we will have a new season starting in January. And we'd love to see people join us. These are always topics that are either to do with the practice of CVC or then jumping into deep dives into particular regions or particular sectors. So we're going to have a great lineup coming up. So once again, I just want to extend a huge thank you to the 4 panelists who sort of shared their insight with us today. So Gil, Jeffrey, Leo, and He, thank you very much. And thank you to the audience as well for staying with us.